So, wouldn't you rather play tennis on weekends? My mother asked when Susan and I, recently engaged, decided to look for a two-family house. Well, no, actually. The house would be an adventure, and I wasn't very good at tennis. And besides, if you have a two-family house, the tenants will help pay the mortgage. What could be better? Oh, yeah, we knew it was going to be a lot of work, but hey, we'd read a book. And how hard could it be? So we moved in to a two-family house in Medford. It needed some work, but it was close to grad school for me and not a bad commute for Susan. We took over the vacant second-floor apartment, and that's when our education began. The first month rolled around. We hadn't gotten any rent from Dennis, who lived below us, so I went downstairs. "Hi, Dennis. I'd like to get the rent." "I'm not paying." "Oh? Why not?" "I'm looking for a new place." Oh, sure. But, you have to pay the rent as long as you're enjoying use of the apartment." "I'm not enjoying it." That was our introduction to landlording. And Dennis eventually moved, but I guess he didn't enjoy the place because we never got the rent. Things got better after that. We had some new tenants, a couple of grad students. We chose them, very affable guys. They decided they had to call us Lord Bronk and Lady Axe. The landlords get it. Things went along, and we actually did a pretty good job on the house. It was nice to be a landlord and provide a good place to live. So sometime later, a long time later, feeling confident and optimistic, we decided to look for another property. This time, we found a three-family. It was kind of run down, too, but it was in an up-and-coming neighborhood, or we hoped an up-and-coming neighborhood of Dorchester, so there was room for appreciation. As the months went by, we made frequent trips from Medford to Dorchester to manage the building. And, with two young kids and full-time jobs, this could become a problem. So we entrusted the management of the building to Nick, a local guy whose name had been given to us by our realtor. Nick was perfect. He was a general contractor, so he could do the repairs on the building. And as a property owner himself, he could select tenants and collect the rents. Nick helped us with the rehab work and the restoration of the building, and things went really well for a while. But after a few months, sometimes all the rents didn't come in. Nick said he was working on it, but then he became harder to get a hold of, too. Frustrated, I went down to the building one day, and the door to one of the apartments was wide open, and there was someone passed out on the floor. Not long after, I fired Nick. Got a new guy. He was good. He found some new tenants, and the building was back on track. Fast forward, 18 months. We were enjoying our kids, our jobs. The building seemed to be under control. One day I was going through the mail. There was a large legal envelope from the U.S. Marshals Service. Inside was a notice about our building. It listed as the owners, Susan, me, and Nick. What was this about? I continued reading until I came to some part about a government seizure. There was a notice, a telephone number in the notice. So the next morning I called it because I wanted to correct their mistake. Nick was not the owner. Nick had been the manager, and we had fired him 18 months ago. The response to this was 5 words that no one wants to hear. "You'd better get a lawyer." So I called the lawyer who had handled our closing, a savvy guy named Eddie. This was all news to him. He made a few calls, and he got back to us to explain. It seemed that an anonymous informant in a drug matter had told the feds that he, the informant, had worked for Nick. And Nick had boasted that he owned our building. And Nick, it turned out, was a drug dealer. So now, the U.S. attorney had determined the property had been acquired with drug assets, and the government wanted to seize the building under something called the civil forfeiture law. "That's crazy," I said. "Nick doesn't own the building. We're not drug dealers, and don't they have to take us to court? Isn't that required under the Fourth Amendment?" You'd think so, said Eddie. But where it's drug dealers' assets, it's the owner that has to go to court to keep the government from seizing the property. Eddie also said, well, the assistant U.S. attorney who has the case said he could see you in the office. Let's see what he has to say. So Eddie, Susan, and I went in a few days and sat down to talk to Chris. He made an offer. If we would release the property, quote, back into the community, meaning selling it immediately, his office would agree to release the building. Well, this would mean selling the building that we'd worked so hard on into a very depressed market. The alternative was go to court and lose everything. So we sold, only after a few extensions, just so we could get an offer. Well, it was nice to have the matter behind us, and the trauma of the situation faded, and the things we enjoyed about being landlords became clearer. We enjoyed the architecture of the old building and exploring city neighborhoods. And we enjoyed making a nice place for tenants to live and dealing with tradesmen who took pride in their work. All things considered, we decided maybe it's time to look for another property. Thank you.